everybody. Good morning. It's a happy Monday. Got some new faces on here today, and a lot of our comp clients have joined us too. Gonna give it another 30 seconds or so to make sure that everybody can get in. Ah, Kimberly Godfrey. Good to see you.
Hello,
Hi.
good to see you as well. Hi, Andrea and Chase.
Hi.
All right. Well, we're going to be prompt today. We're going to go ahead and get started. Good to see everybody. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of new faces on here, a lot of our compensation clients on here too. I'm Kendra Bryant, leading Hannah Resource Group, and so excited to kick off another one of our salary increase projection webinars. We try to give you these every year as a way to understand what you need to budget for salary increases for the upcoming year. And so a lot of the survey data is out. Andrea is going to spend some time going through that survey data today and then walking through how you might want to budget salary increase projections so that you're prepared for 2026 to meet the market. So, again, excited to have Andrea here. I just saw Lyle hop on as well. We love doing these webinars. Hopefully, this is helpful for you all today. Andrea, you want to give it a go?
Sure. Do I have the ability to change the slide, Chase, or are you doing that?
He's giving it to you right now.
Okay. Well, a little about us. Kendra just introduced everybody, and we're happy to be here and spend the next 45 minutes or so going over this.
Yeah. And I'll say really quickly, I mentioned a lot of our compensation clients on here. So a lot of our clients on here have done compensation studies with us, and then we maintain their market-based compensation structures. So if you are one of our ongoing clients, we should already be in conversations with you about where you need to budget based on your fiscal year. If not, reach out to us and we'll make sure that we have an individualized conversation directly for your organization. So one of the unique things that we do at HRG. So, all right, sorry, Andrea, take it away.
No problem. All right. So I'm going to preface this with I am not an economist, and I cannot tell you I don't have a crystal ball. So what I'm doing is summarizing using all my experience I've had over the past years and and telling what the economists are telling us and sort of what that means for you all and how you should look at your salary budgets for 2026. So right now we're seeing a lot of two opposing factors. One is the economy, which is different than it's probably been in many years. We have tariffs and we have inflation that's driving these upward pressure on prices, which could be causing companies to have lower margins, but it's also causing employees expectations for what their wage adjustments should be to be higher, because they're seeing all of this as well in their personal lives. Then we get to the labor market. It is slowing, but it's certainly not cold. Okay. So I would say it's definitely warm still, much more warm than cold. So we are seeing some slower job growth, and slower recruiting, maybe some rising unemployment, and some easing. And we're going to show you this easing of wage pressures compared to recent years. But if you go back to 2020, we're still higher than where we were. So easing, but still warm. Maybe not as hot as it's been in the past couple of years. Go down to the next slide. There we go. So unemployment is still at historic lows. This was all put together before the government shutdown. I have no idea what that is doing as far as where we're going to end up with unemployment. But right now, hiring is slowing, but we do see fewer people entering the workforce. So still, again, unemployment's still low, But hiring is slowing. So it's one of those, it's sort of dichotomous here that is it good or bad? We're not really sure, but market is appearing to be a little bit slower than it has been in the past. And you can see the big line, the big upward we had obviously in 2020, and it's come down to normal levels since then. So inflation doesn't always correlate with wage increases. However, it does raise your expectations of your employees. So if you look before 2020, you can see that we were pretty much in a 3% salary budget year after year after year. It never changed, regardless of where inflation was, but inflation was low. So employees got very used to getting this 3%, which was higher than the inflation rate. Then we had, 2020, inflation went through the roof, and wages went up with it, but not all the way up with it. And now they're both trending down, but just realize that employees are still wanting to see higher cost of living adjustments compared to where they were in the past. So we have to manage the expectation of the employee as well as what we're really doing as far as what the companies can afford. And that's the next slide. We are seeing that companies are not increasing prices as much as maybe we thought they would with some of the things going on in the market. And you all would be able to speak to this more. I'm sure it's industry by industry. But if the prices are stable and we're seeing these higher inflation and some tariff implications, that normally means that margins are less for companies. And so then that's sort of saying, well, are we able to give high wage increases to folks if we don't know where this is all going to go from a high inflation and lower margin type environment? Okay, so that's my economist lesson. Like I said, that's where we think the environment is. And so what that puts us in basically is that HR professionals are going to have to walk a tightrope. They always do, but it's more so now than ever before. So you have to balance the affordability of being able to give wage increases with keeping your labor competitive to the market. So two different opposing factors there. Then you have the labor market is slowing. So your executive staff is saying, oh, we don't need to give these high increases anymore. But the labor market is still, as I said, very much warm, even maybe hot, but just not as hot as it has been. And there are certain segments that are really still growing. And we have pockets throughout different industries of roles and departments that are still very in-demand roles and are going to require wage adjustments to stay competitive. So that tightrope is telling us what we might want to look at is to consider differentiating your salary budgets and putting your money, more of your money in those roles and market segments that need it more than just giving a vanilla market increase. And so as far as the results go, we have, next slide, please. We have 6 different surveys that we have pulled the data from here, and it's just the high-level data. But what you can see for the 2026 salary increase budget is it's ranging anywhere from 3.2 to 3.3% average, all the way to 3.6% mean. With I would say the consensus, the most used is 3.5%. So again, we're not looking at the 4% that we had in the past couple of years, but we also are not looking at 3%, which we had before 2020. So also, if you look at the 2025 actual increase budgets there, you'll see that they are slightly higher than what was projected for 2026. So, or slightly lower, I'm sorry, than what were projected for 2025 budget. So again, slightly lower. We are seeing a little bit of a cool off in the salary increase, wage increase pressures. So conference board, I'm just doing some key takeaways from the different surveys that we have. Again, salary budgets are around 3.5, a little bit more, a little bit less. And 61% of the survey participants cite economic uncertainty as a factor that's slowing their workforce plans. So it's not that things are really bad now. It's just things are very uncertain. And so people are being conservative. And I'm all about being conservative, but we have to stay the course with making sure we stay to market, but also realize that we just don't know what's going to happen in the future. I will say that many companies, not all companies, but many companies are trying to move to more performance-driven compensation decisions versus in the past couple of years, it's been retention. We just need to keep our employees. We need to keep them. The labor market's hot. They're willing to move for more money. And so that was sort of the strategy. And now it's more like we have the workforce that we need. It's stabilizing. And what we really need to do is drive performance with our compensation philosophies. And then again, there's this new thought that the market is leveling out for some, but not for all roles and departments and industries. And so we need to be very conscious of those that are still very hot and making sure that we are applying the right resources to those so that we don't end up in bidding wars and losing folks in those segments. From World at Work, their key takeaways were that we are declining. So we went from 3.9 actual in 2024, 3.7 in 2025, and now we're down to an estimated of around 3.5 budget for 2026. What they also saw that there's far less variance. In 2022, 23, 24, we were seeing some companies give 8% and some companies give 2%. But now it's very much that's constricting, and we're getting that 3.5% more as a median across the whole spectrum of companies and industries. And so that number, what does that number mean? When we say 3.5% budget, it is the budget for total increases. That is made up of several different types of increases. So we have our cost of living adjustments. I like to say cost of labor adjustments, but the cost of living adjustments where we give them to all eligible employees, and that is basically to just do exactly what it says, keep up with cost of living. Merit increases, that's where we said people are starting to focus more on pay increases granted for the individual employee performance. And then other adjustments, this can be anything. It can be pay equity, it could be market adjustments, any reason that you have to increase pay. It's not promotion, but everything beyond that. And then the total increase is the three of those together. And so we'll show you the breakout of that 3.5%, or actually it's we picked the one that's 3.6%, but we'll show you how that breaks out between the three. If you don't give merit increases, then you should look at the COLA increases as being that 3.5%. If you do give merit increases, you want to put in the two different, you want to combine the two so that, there is some cost of living for folks regardless of their performance. And we could definitely help you with that if you have questions about that. Some folks do promotional increase budgets on top of this, others do not. But the one thing that we'll talk about a little bit later is salary structure increases. So they're separate from the increases that you see that are given to employees, but you want to make sure that you're moving your structure at least annually to keep it competitive to the market. So this is the breakout by the different types of increases. You will see that the 2025 projected mean was higher than the 20-25% actual. So we have seen this historically over the last couple of years we have these projections. Companies are doing their best to figure out what they're going to do. And we've seen that they have not met that projection. It's slightly off, you know, 0.1%, but still it is a little bit lower. So as we look at the 2026 projections, if you want to look at it conservatively, you could probably assume based off past performance that that number will be a little bit less on an actual basis than it is on a projected basis. You'll also see that, again, a lot of companies are focused on the merit piece. So they're putting the majority of that increase into merit. And then we're looking at COLAs that are ranging from 1.8 to 1.3%, projected this year at 1.5. I know Social Security just came out with their cost of living adjustments this weekend, and I think it was 2.8. So, you know, if you don't have the merit piece or some other piece where you're doing adjustments to folks, you probably need to look at, you know, a much higher 3% at least on your cost of living adjustments. So what can you do? Well, this is from WTW, Watson Terry Watson, but this is sort of what folks are looking at. And this is, I can tell you, this is exactly what my clients are doing as well, especially if you haven't been able to keep up with the adjustments that we've had in the past. When we were hitting 4.2, 4%, if you weren't able to give them then, now that the market is slowing slightly, maybe you can try to catch up at this point. So one thing is to make sure that your salary ranges are competitive to market. So you might have done a good job of giving your employees pay increases to keep them to market, but you haven't adjusted your structure. And so you'll probably be having some compression issues at this point if you haven't done that. And then you don't have those guidelines anymore. You don't know where you are. And so a full compensation review of all your employees, or at least of specific employee groups, are the top three things that we're looking at. Making sure your market ranges are to market. The other thing that has happened is that typically in the past, we've adjusted salary ranges slightly less, 50 to 75% of what you're giving to your employees in a full increase amount. So in other words, if you were giving your employees 3%, probably only adjusting your pay ranges 1.5 to 2%. But that wasn't working for the last couple of years because it was moving so fast that really the structure needed to be moved very similar to what the adjustments were. And so if you were not able to do that, your salary range might need a full review to make sure that it is appropriately based in the market, and then review of your employees to make sure that they're all within the range in the correct positions based off either performance or experience or whatever you use as a metric to help people move through the range. So, questions?
Not everybody all at once. There's nothing in the chat, so no questions. Can anybody speak to what they're planning on maybe doing? If anybody feels comfortable sharing that.
Some of the folks on here, I haven't gotten to their recommendations yet.
So they're waiting on you. They're
waiting for me.
Okay, all right.
But
Andrea, are there factors that you're watching through the end of the year to see what might come out before you get to the new year? Are there indicators to watch that you're focused on?
So we won't really, I mean, you all know this is just crazy time. So there's really nothing we're watching in particular. I assume the government shutdown is going to have some impact if it doesn't end anytime soon. But I'm not sure what that's going to be. So we'll just have to follow that and see how that kind of plays out. But then these surveys, a lot of them will have some pulse surveys, just smaller sample sizes, quick questions, towards the end of the year to kind of verify and see if anything has changed since they asked the questions earlier in the fall. So we would definitely have that information if you need it, or you can go out and look at it. It's, those Mercer, World at Work, Pay Scale type of organizations will put out these pulse surveys that'll verify or tell us that things have changed in that equation.
Thank you.
It looks like we've got a couple in the chat now, Andrea. So it looks like someone's a nonprofit, so they struggle with ensuring increases are sustainable for their funding sources. Yeah, it's kind of hard when your budget's dependent on somebody else's approval of a grant, I'm sure, or some sort of federal fund.
Yes. I work with a lot of nonprofits and or municipal groups that are, not beholden to shareholders, not trying to make profit. And it is difficult because you are more walking the tightrope than anybody. And these nonprofit groups have probably been impacted more from a wage standpoint. It really needs to be looked at overall from a total comp philosophy. A lot of times nonprofits rely on their benefits to sort of shore up the difference or intangibles. And in this environment, employees are just saying, I need the money. So, you might want to look like that is going to, if there's any way to sort of rearrange the compensation and maybe put more into wages and less into benefits if possible, or to bring out, benefits that don't cost the company a whole lot, but can help people say, it's, I don't have as big of increase, but I have this, and this is I'm willing to stay for that. So those are the only two things I can tell you to try to drive that. Also, we do phased in approaches. So I've worked with a lot of my clients who I've said, you are this far below market, but we know you can't get there in X amount, like all in one group, because you just don't have the revenue or any way of increasing the revenue source. So we've come up with ways to hit those hot jobs, get increases to as many people as possible, but then also work within that budget. As far as hot jobs, engineering is definitely a big one. I work with a lot of city government. Police are still an issue. Linemen and water jobs in the utility industries are still hot jobs.
Nurses and LPNs.
Nurses, they're still hot. I would say they're warm compared to where they were, though. And CNAs as well.
CNAs, yeah.
Yeah. So
work for city government. Can you tell them how you think that might affect the city government? All these different.
the same as nonprofits and all of those
factors.
other things. So, I mean, you all, believe it or not, especially depending on what area you're in, I work with a lot of cities that have a lot of growth, and that's great for the city. And it in some cases, it's bringing in more revenue. In some cases, it's not, because there's structured plans to bring in the new industries. The county's getting some of it. I mean, there's all these different things that are impacting it. So you're seeing this growth, and that's great because the people that is bringing people into your city, but it's also bringing new jobs. And so some of your city employees are saying, hey, I want to go work for them instead of the city. So we really encourage you to, as much as possible, and I know, there's only so much you can do, but really try to. And if you haven't been able to keep up with 4%, 3.5%, 3.6%, 3.5% now, you're probably going to be feeling that pinch even more. And so you're going to have to come up with a plan. I mean, I've had cities who've delayed equipment purchases. I've had cities, unfortunately, that actually had to dip into contingency. I mean, there's other things you can do, because once you lose your workforce, it's hard to get them back. So I know some of you all probably have employees that are on the retirement plan in the top tier, and they're going to stay with you to the end. But if you have other employees, the newer employees, much harder to keep them without being competitive not to just other cities, but being competitive to the companies that are in your cities as well.
Somebody's a nonprofit, and unfortunately, they're not going to be able to probably do anything much this year, but they're planning on maybe doing something in 26 for some folks.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how concerned everybody is about the big beautiful bill and how it may affect compensation. Their HRS company has provided a little insight about this, and now with the shutdown, all the updates from them from the government has stopped. Hmm.
um, yeah, again, I am not an economist, and I've never had to deal with. None of us have, right? I mean, the government's never been shut down this long, and it doesn't appear to be
Moving any
anytime
direction.
soon. So it's hard for anybody, even the best, as far as being able to predict these things, to know what this impact's going to have.
I think the most tangible one for the big beautiful bill is that it sounds like everybody's health insurance costs will go up,
Yes.
regardless of whether or not they can find a subsidy extension from the shutdown reason, right?
Right.
So I mean that'll probably all hit us next year,
It will hit, and
quite significantly.
right. And I don't know if you are heavily subsidizing your medical plans, that's great. And if you can continue to do that and manage the other parts of the business, including wage increases, that's great. That might be the one thing you have to consider, because unfortunately, the way we've structured our benefits now and the way health care is going is that, not everyone uses benefits the same way. The younger folks, they're staying on their parents' plan until they're 26. So if you have a young workforce, they don't really even care at this point about having the health insurance. And so you're paying all this money to a group of folks that is usually, loves the benefit, but it's not hitting the same across all of your employees. Whereas if you scale back a little bit on how much your cost is on the benefit side and put that a little bit more on the employee, then you can put more money into their pay, which will impact the entire workforce. But I mean, it's tough, and you can't do that now, right? If you already have your benefits plan in place, it is what it is for next year. So
let's see.
So someone says salary.com and other new recruits are doing to leverage discussions on starting salaries. I mean, this is the whole pay transparency issue. It's only going to get bigger and bigger. Kentucky doesn't have a pay transparency, full on pay transparency law like many of the other states do. They did have a couple come up, and our resident expert here, Tim, could probably tell us more about it. I think they all died in committee in the spring. But regardless of whether you have a law or not, employees are doing a much deeper dive on what they think they should be paid for what they're doing and what other companies are paying. Now, that information is not always accurate. Obviously, it's in their best interest for employees to tell another employee that they're getting paid at a higher rate than they are, or to exaggerate a little bit what's going on. But the thing is, employees are more savvy and understanding of what pay is and what they should be paid. And sometimes their expectations are not correct. So you need to set those expectations, but you also need to make sure you understand what is truly competitive in the market. So you can come back to them and say, this is the fair market competitive rate. Yes, there are probably people who make more, but we pay a fair competitive rate. If you can't pay that rate, then that's where, between pay transparency in the last couple of years, you're really going to struggle to try to keep up, and you're going to have to come up with something else, whether it be other parts of the business don't get as much of a budget and apply that to your wage budget so you can become more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, can you, in your opinion, or in your professional experience, Andrea, yeah, I guess question the source too, right? Like how valid and reliable is some of that information that's available for free?
Well, you can
the
tell
internet?
employees that it's not completely accurate, but don't really care, right? I mean, like they're out there between AI and
It don't
other
help.
things that are out there, they can get a pretty, they're saying, no, this is what it's telling me. And you can choose to listen to what they're saying. But I mean, basically, they're not terrible. They're just going to be slightly inflated. And they're going to, usually it's the one off that's going to be out there posted, right? So someone is going to go out and say, I love my company. I left my company and I went to this new company and I made X amount more money and this is what I'm making. And that might have been a one off. And so you have to understand that that data is not verified or that validated, but that employees are seeing it. And so you have to manage that expectation. And they are going to be able to tell you if your market rates aren't competitive. I mean, so if you have more than 3 or 4 or 5 employees or recruits coming in saying you all aren't competitive, then you probably need to take a look and see if what they're saying is true. Probably not all the way to where they want it to be to Bright, but maybe there is an issue.
Let's see. Let me back up here. Do we have any low cost benefit ideas that may be attractive for people that can't afford things?
I mean, obviously everyone's changed. If you can work at home
Yeah.
is one. PTO is a hard one, especially in when I mentioned some of the PTO one is really hard because usually the jobs that are hot right now are the ones where it's not jobs that they're actually working overtime because there's not enough of these people, right? So you have all this extra overtime costs and you can't just say, hey, take off a week and refresh because we need you here to cover all our shifts. So that one's can be a little tricky as well. Flexible schedules, obviously. I mean, office environment, it's much easier to do things than it is in healthcare, manufacturing, and public
Retail, customer
sector.
service, stuff like that.
Yeah. Um,
Um, Kimberly Godfrey. Oh yeah, they have a tiered system, and how much the employer pays for them, based on how much you make. So the contribution from the employer is higher the less you make in their salary distribution.
Anything you can come up with,
Yeah.
just make sure I am not a legal expert and I am not a benefits expert. So just make sure that whatever you're doing is, you're working with some sort of benefits broker who can help you with compliance. To make sure that those types of things make sense. I've had lots of folks who are on the state pension plan who want to do it that way as well. Like, can we not pay the ones that are on the higher tier less? You just have to make sure it's all in compliance. Those are out of the box ideas and they're great. And I think benefit cost is the one you're going to have to look at the most. So again, sounds like a great idea. I just need to make sure that it checks all the compliance boxes.
I think that's pretty much all of the comments in here. Is there anything else? Anybody else want to throw a question or a comment in the chat? All righty. Well, there's our contact information if you need to reach out to Andrea or anybody and pick their brain more, I guess, about compensation. And I guess if you are a client of ours, and I guess we'll be talking to you soon about this anyway, right? Um, so we also have a SHRM code for the session. Hold on, let me just move one. We have that as well if you need to put in for credit for SHRM or HRCI, sorry. So yeah, so appreciate everybody joining us today. And this is recorded and we will send this out in the next day or so. Okay, so if you need these slides or you need this info to share with your team, it'll be available for you. Sound good? Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all, very helpful.
Yeah. Everybody take care. I'm gonna shut it off now. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.